Good afternoon and welcome to the next in our Export Skills Program workshops. And today, of course, we continue our discussion in the Advanced eCommerce module. And we're looking in more detail today at e-commerce marketplaces. I'm Collins Rex. I'm a director with the Global Trade Professionals Alliance. And the GTPA is an organization that cultivates international standards within the industry. Our aim is to create a trade environment that is both inclusive and trusted by all. And the GTPA, of course, has partnered with Global Victoria to deliver this comprehensive export skills program. The address you see on the screen will take you to the entire program, which will give you the details of all those sessions still to come. As always, I just draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen and remind you as well that this webinar is being recorded. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, which for me is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us online today. So as I mentioned, I am Collins Rex and I'll be your host for today's session. And as always, over the course of the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. If they are relevant to the discussion at the moment, and if they are of relevance to the broader audience, I'll take them at the time that you post them. If not, we'll hold them to the end. And if they are really specific and really only of application to a tiny percentage of the audience, I might take it offline. So let's get straight into it, shall we? Up to this point, we've discovered a lot more about doing your own website. So we've looked in more detail at platforms and how you go about designing your website. And of course, last week, we looked in some more detail at those specific trends, the do's and don'ts around making your eShop, the one that you have on your own website, work as well as it possibly can. Well, today we're looking in more detail at marketplaces. And of course, the marketplace is what you use if you are not using your own website and your own eShop to sell your products. Now, you might decide to do both. You certainly can, but this session looking in more detail at marketplaces, what they are, how they work, and then we're going to drill down into some specifics. So today, selecting your marketplace, what you need to look for, do's and don'ts, and also available as part of this session, which I'm happy to email out to you after today, is a template that you can use to determine which of the marketplaces are best suited for you. So some basic points that you need to be aware of. We're also going to look at the big 3 plus 1 at a glance. So we're going to drill down into some more detail into those marketplaces that are the most dominant ones worldwide. And then we're going to look at some niche marketplaces to consider, particularly in certain sectors. And finally, today, we're going to do a quick overview of some of the marketplaces that are the ones that you really need to be aware of in different parts of the world. As always, as I said, those questions to be typed in the chat box, please. So let's start off by selecting your marketplace. So what exactly is an online marketplace? Just to recap, an online marketplace is an e-commerce site where multiple third-party sellers list their products. So it's a bit like a shopping center, if you like, where a lot of different products are sold across a number of different e-shops. Online marketplaces, transactions are processed by the marketplace and not by the seller. So how do marketplaces work? Well, this is a very simplified explanation, but essentially there are a few steps in the chain. First of all, shoppers make a purchase in the marketplace. So let's say, for example, the shoppers get to the Amazon marketplace and they might get there directly by typing in Amazon.com, or they get there via a search engine like Google. They browse, they select an item or items via the product page, and then when the shopper goes to check out at Amazon, the order will be submitted through the Amazon marketplace. The marketplace then passes the order details along to the seller. So when a shopper makes a purchase, the marketplace, in this case Amazon, lets the third-party seller, in this case it's Sony, know by sending the order details from the marketplace to the seller, and the third-party seller then sends the customer the product. So in this case, the third-party seller handles fulfillment for that purchase. Now, different marketplaces have different fulfillment policies, but this is the basic structure for how most marketplaces work with third-party sellers. Now, of course, also know that the marketplace could be selling directly as well. So in the case of Amazon, there are certain Amazon products that are Amazon sold, that are not sold through third parties. And in that case, of course, Amazon is the seller and Amazon fulfills the entire order. Now, why would you think about selling via an online marketplace? One of the biggest benefits, of course, is the pre-existing customer base. Online marketplaces are already trusted by hundreds of millions of shoppers who check those marketplaces first when they need to buy something. A shopper that is not aware of your specific brand, has no knowledge of your specific brand, is highly unlikely to look for you directly, but they will go to a marketplace and your brand might come up in their search. Selling on an online marketplace can also be much easier and faster than building your own e-commerce website because, of course, the interface is built for you. And it's an interface with which those shoppers are already familiar. So there's no education process involved in helping shoppers to purchase from you. Once you're approved as a third-party seller on a marketplace, all you need to do is create your product listings. Once you've created those listings, everything else is taken care of for you. Now, many online marketplaces also offer third-party sellers opportunities to promote their products specifically to shoppers. And case in point here is Amazon advertising. And there are also options to outsource the entire fulfillment process, such as Fulfilled by Amazon. Now, we mention Amazon a lot here because they are one of the most well-known marketplaces because they've also been around for a long time. A lot of the systems, the processes, and indeed the help mechanisms have been refined and are really working well and have been doing so for a long time. Now, when you choose a marketplace, you really need to take into account a whole rafter of factors. And that includes what is best for your business, your brand, your product, and your service, and of course, where you are selling. As I mentioned at the start of today's session, I will make available a template for you that goes into a great deal of detail, lots of different questions, lots of different subsections with questions that you need to ask in your research process. But at the very least, you need to consider the following. Are you selling B2C or B2B? Not all marketplaces cater for both. Some marketplaces really work entirely for B2C and others focus on B2B. In the case of B2B marketplaces, they usually have very different listing requirements. The sites look very different and they also have very different account management features because B2B selling is a lot more complex than B2C selling rather. You also need to consider your customer's location. So where do your target customers live? Pay attention to which markets each marketplace serves. So Amazon and eBay, for example, might serve your US audiences if you're selling into the United States, but Alibaba and Rakuten will better serve Asian markets. Bearing in mind, again, they are not all available in all markets. Consider geographic location. Those geographic locations will have their own well-known marketplaces. Those are the ones in which you will consider selling, and they also have marketplaces that are not available in certain locations. So if you are only on those marketplaces, you can't sell into certain areas. Your products, of course, are vitally important. So what is it that you are wanting to sell? Each marketplace carries their own line of products and services. Some of them are really wide. So the Amazons, the eBays of this world sell pretty much anything, and they sell pretty much to everywhere with some exceptions. But all marketplaces have rules or regulations for the types of products that you're allowed to sell on their platform. So, for example, Amazon has strict policies around certain medical devices like syringes. You may not be allowed to sell those on Amazon. There are others that will allow you to sell products of that nature. So just as you have those marketplaces that sell a huge range of different products, there are also any number of marketplaces that specialize in niche products. And we're going to be looking in a little bit more detail at some of those later on today. So popular examples of niche marketplaces include Etsy, which is almost exclusively for handmade goods, of course, Poshmark, where people buy and sell used fashion, and Newegg, where people sell electronics. Niche marketplaces have really been pushing the boundaries in the last few years, and many of them go beyond just product listings. They have really interesting content, they have blogs, they have user groups, etc. So what you need to do is to research where products like yours may or may not already be selling, and that will help you decide where you should invest. Now, there are pros and cons to selling in a marketplace that is already selling products like yours. The pros, of course, being that people are already comfortable with searching for those products at that marketplace. They expect to find them there. On the other hand, competition can be rife. So if a marketplace sells a wide range of products and they sell many products similar to yours, of course, is competing for that virtual shelf space at that marketplace. Another factor to consider, which is very important, and it might in fact be one of the most important factors to consider when choosing your marketplace, is exactly how much does it cost. Every marketplace levies costs, they all levy fees, they levy commissions, etc. You need to understand exactly what you're paying. If you don't know exactly what you're paying, you could find that you are in fact selling at a loss. Every marketplace has its own cost structure, so you need to understand how each one of those works when you start researching the marketplaces you're considering. If you cannot sell it at a profit, you don't have a business. For your business to be sustainable, you need to make sufficient money. Also look at which services they provide for things like shipping and what those cost. Sometimes it will be more cost effective for you to use the shipping provided by the marketplace than to handle your own order fulfillments. But again, you need to be informed. So Amazon, for example, is famous for their fulfillment by Amazon or FBA program, but you need to look at the costs and you need to weigh that against your own e-commerce objectives and your price points. So looking now in some more detail at the big three. And of course, when we're talking about the big three, we're talking Amazon, eBay, and Alibaba. Now, there are others that are enormous too, but for our purposes today, we're looking in more detail at these three, which will also give you a much clearer idea of the sort of information you need to consider when you are looking at your different marketplaces. Amazon is the leading online marketplace in the United States, and the United States is a very large e-commerce market, but Amazon is also the dominant marketplace in most places in the world. Net sales in 2019 was $280.5 billion. That's a fair chunk of money. The Amazon marketplace is also one of the most well-known marketing channels for online retailers, And of course, those pros and cons, it's most well known, therefore it is also one of the most competitive. Now, when you set up on Amazon, you'll choose a plan, and there are any number of different plans from which you can choose. You'll create a seller account and you'll upload your products. So what does it cost? Well, this is a nutshell view of what it costs. You really do need to go and get all the facts, but essentially, for a professional seller, there's a monthly subscription fee of $39.99, and that is US. Now, when we're talking professional sellers, we're talking businesses that use Amazon as their marketplace. There's also a referral fee on each item sold, and this varies by category, and it can vary quite widely. And then there are variable closing fees. So when the sale is actually completed, and again, that varies by category, there can also be discounts for volume, etc. The seller fees for an individual seller, so that is if you as an individual, not a registered business, you as an individual are selling through Amazon, there's no monthly subscription fee for individuals, and there's a flat 99 US cent fee for each item sold. And again, those closing fees vary by category. Now, if you are going to sell on Amazon, there are just a few things that you need to keep in mind, and this again at the bare minimum. You need to consider the Amazon search engine optimization and the A9 algorithm, and you have to have those top of mind when you create your product listings. If you don't, your product won't be found in the quagmire of other products on Amazon. You need to invest in your Amazon store, including having really good content. The better your content, the better your cut through will be. And you also need to enhance your brand content as much as possible. The better you sell your product on Amazon, the better your product will sell. You also need to keep a tight handle on your supply chain. Your inventory management needs to be really good on Amazon. Your fulfillment has to be consistent and reliable. If you are not great at fulfilling orders, your Amazon rating will plummet and you simply won't sell. So you have to be really, really on the ball when you sell through Amazon, because the reviews that you get from customers will fundamentally affect your success. Also enroll in the Amazon brand registry, and this gives you protection of the intellectual property that sits in your brand, and it also creates a trusted customer experience. If you are listed on the Amazon brand registry, not only are you protected, but your customers know that if they buy your brand is the actual brand they expect to buy and not some ripoff. Research all the potential niches before you decide on the products you want to sell. So you might not choose to sell your entire product range through Amazon. Have a look at all the different areas that your products could fit into and make a calculated decision about what you sell and where. And also take advantage of Amazon advertising. But of course, do that by building out a proper strategy and make sure that that strategy dovetails with your greater online marketing strategy. So the next one of the marketplaces we're going to focus on is eBay. eBay has around 180 million worldwide buyers, and it remains one of the biggest online retailers internationally. Now, of course, eBay started its life as a C2C platform where individuals sold to individuals, and they did it by auction. That has changed substantially over time, and it is now as much about B2C as it is about C2C, if not more so. eBay is really easy to use. It offers a quick start guide, which will help you to sell in just 4 easy steps. And you can create a My eBay page from which you can answer questions, where people can view sales information, etc. And it also offers business consultation. And a lot of the consultation offered is done for free. And this includes having a business efficiency guide and seller development resources. There's also the eBay Seller Hub, which is designed to help you run your business as smoothly as possible. So you can run promotions through eBay, print your shipping labels, etc. And you also get insights into product trends so that you know which of your products are best sellers and how they stack up against the competition. You'll know which promotions users are most attracted to, how long it takes you to pick and pack and ship products, etc., and a whole lot of other statistics that you can monitor. So what does it cost to sell on eBay? There are two different types of selling fees. There's an insertion fee, and that happens when you create your listing. And then there's a final value fee when your item sells. Now, it can get complicated because they apply all sorts of different formulae to how this works. So the best thing to do is go to eBay and get the details, which are set out very clearly on the site, and you can see the address there. And again, as always, if you want a copy of today's deck, just drop me an email and I'll give you my email address at the end, and you'll have access to all of these links. So some best practices to apply when selling through eBay. If you can, you should offer fast and free or low-cost shipping and free returns. This will convert more shoppers. The better the shipping that you offer, even if it's amortized over the cost of the product, if people see free shipping, they generally like that a great deal because they don't want to be hit with those unknown costs at checkout. And of course, free returns also vitally important to push up your estimation in the eyes of your shoppers. You really do need to think about the titles and the product descriptions that you use on eBay. The better you do that, the better you will rank in the eBay search results. And of course, the more interested people will be to visit your product pages. Also, make sure that your product listings and your photos are accurate and give as many details as possible to avoid customer confusion. And of course, if a customer is confused, the chances are that a customer is also dissatisfied, and a dissatisfied customer is very rarely a return one. Have a look at what other people are charging and price your products competitively. And that including that all-important shipping cost. Now, the next one of the big three, the final one of the big three we're going to be looking at today is Alibaba. Alibaba, of course, China's e-commerce giant that we all know was started by Jack Ma in a back room with 18 people, and it now employs over 22,000 people worldwide, and it has an office right here in Melbourne. Alibaba is an international business-to-business site, and this is very important to note. Alibaba sells B2B. It connects suppliers with buyers across the globe, and it does it on a single marketplace platform. Alibaba can definitely be an excellent marketing engine for suppliers, but you have to keep in mind that it can take years to rise to the top of Alibaba search results, and it can be very expensive. So make sure that it's worthwhile for your business before you get started on Amazon, or rather on Alibaba. Now, I know that there are several people online today, and I'm sort of looking through the list of names as I'm speaking to you, that do sell through Alibaba. Alibaba definitely has a very real place in the B2B market, but you just need to know what it is you're in for. So you need to obviously register your account, establish your profile, and list your products, and that is certainly simple enough. So what does it cost? Well, in the case of Alibaba, it's very much a case of how long is a piece of string. Pricing depends on the type of product you sell and the individual Alibaba portal on which you sell it. Now, there are many different Alibaba portals. Some of them are even fee-free. There are other costs involved, but the upfront fees don't occur, but you need to choose wisely. There are also subscription and transaction fees in most cases. And while you can join for free, basic membership really limits the number of products that are displayed, as well as your access to promotional tools. So for most businesses, it is functionally useless to go down the free route. you need to have a paid subscription, and that starts opening all manner of great promotional doors. Selling on Alibaba can be very expensive if you are a smaller business. Any seller fees are in addition to the 1% charge associated with Alipay as well. And that, of course, is the PayPal-like payment processor. Alibaba likes to own the full transaction. So there's Alipay, there's Alibank, where you can get financing for your e-commerce business, etc. So end-to-end, Alibaba can offer a full service to you as a business. You need to understand exactly what is involved at every step of the process, though. So some best practice tips for Alibaba. Of course, it is a B2B website. So their best sellers are generally items that can be mass produced and sold wholesale to replenish inventory for companies. Consider investing in a gold membership if you plan to make Alibaba one of your main online marketplace channels, and if you can afford to do so. And take advantage of Alibaba's training and educational resources. They do offer a whole suite of support services to their sellers. So you can get a lot of information about doing things well, doing them properly on Alibaba. Also bear in mind that Alibaba does make use of a lot of those seasonal promotions. So the little image that you see there actually comes from a recent Singles Day. Alibaba is known for their 11 days. They do all sorts of promotions tied to Chinese festivities, but they also do things like Black Friday and so on. And if you sell through Alibaba, you will be expected to be part of those promotions. Now, before we move on, just a word on Etsy. So the big three, and then there's Etsy. So I include Etsy here because if you're a smaller seller of particularly craft type goods, handmade goods, etc., then Etsy is one that you might want to consider. So Etsy describes themselves as being for crafters, artists, and collectors. And except for items that they categorize as vintage or supplies, Etsy is absolutely designed to sell handmade items created by the person selling the product. And we're not just talking here about items like clothing, etc. We're also talking about things like small batch handmade cosmetics and other consumables of that nature. So Etsy sellers sell products independent of the Etsy brand. So when products are sold on Etsy, people are buying from you, not from Etsy. That is quite different from the way it looks on other marketplaces. But of course, that means that there are certain things that you have to take into account when you are selling on Etsy. Of course, you need to create account that's standard. On Etsy, you also need to set your shop location and the currency in which you sell. You need to choose a shop name because remember, people are buying from you, not from Etsy. So you need to come up with a name that is catchy, that does all the right things by way of branding, and that name is how you will be associated on Etsy. You need to create your listings, you need to set a payment method, and you need to set a billing method as well. Now, you can see here how Etsy looks. If you've never been to the site before, and I'm sure all of you have, you can see that things are clearly stipulated around where the product comes from, and that's why you need to set your location, and then you've got the name of the person who has made the product or the shop if you have created a brand name for your products. So what does it cost to sell on Etsy? Well, there's a transaction fee of 5%. There's a subscription fee, and just like all the others, this depends on the tier that you choose. There's a shipping fee, and this fee can include Etsy shipping labels, FedEx labels, Australia Post labels, etc. You also do get your first 40 listings for free, and the Etsy Plus plan costs an additional $10 a month, which really isn't a great deal of money at all. Now, in exchange for that additional money, you get an expanded set of tools, and this will help you jumpstart growth and so forth, according to Etsy itself. So Etsy is actually quite a cost-efficient way of selling, but it does depend on what you sell. You can't sell mass manufactured goods on Etsy at all. Some tips for Etsy: you need to look at their advertising options, and that includes promoted listings, etc. And you can be part of that, and you can manage it all through your advertising dashboard. You do need to sell unique, high quality products, and you need to make sure that your photographs and your listings reflect that, because people are going to judge your product by the way they look in the photograph. So take really schmick pictures if you can. If you can't do it yourself, get somebody else in to do it. Preferably don't do it on your mobile phone if you want really high quality pictures. And if you do, make sure that you have the right settings enabled on your phone so that you're actually taking relatively high res photographs. So we've talked about the big ones. Now let's look at some niche marketplaces to consider. So just to recap, not all marketplaces are created equal. Some are geared towards B2C, some towards B2B. Some are aimed at mass market products, others at high-end luxury brands, some at handmade goods. Some are very popular in specific markets, and others are more generically popular across many different countries across the world. Some are suited to the sale of physical goods, others to digital products, and yet others to professional services, and indeed personal services. To be successful, you need to choose a marketplace that suits your industry, your brand, and your product and your service, as well, of course, as the location into which you are selling. So looking at some of the top B2B marketplaces, and these are by volume of goods sold. They're not in any particular order, but these do tend to be the bigger ones. There's Amazon, of course, which we've already talked about, largest marketplace in the US, serves as a global marketplace. Rakuten, which is called the Amazon of Japan, and we're going to look at them in a little bit more detail. eBay, we've covered eBay. Walmart, the retailer, the American retailer, which now also sells online and fairly recently opened to global markets. Over 110 million buyers. Etsy, we've talked about. Ruby Lane specializes in vintage goods. Newegg specializes in electronics, and we'll look at them in a little bit more detail. And Top Hatter, a niche marketplace for electronics, gifts, collectibles, etc. Now, this is not intended to be an exhaustive list. If we had an exhaustive list, we would be here for weeks on end. This is just a snapshot of the sorts of markets that cater for B2C, and it gives you an idea of the sort of things you need to be looking at when you are selling B2C. Now, the top B2B marketplaces, and again, these are per volume of sale, and we're going to look at a few more of these in the B2Cs, because the B2Bs are the ones that are probably a little bit less well known to most of us than the B2Cs. So the first one here is Alibaba. We've covered that one. We know that it's a Chinese company and it serves millions of buyers and suppliers globally. The next one is ThomasNet. This is a leading online platform for B2B seller discovery and product sourcing, and they have around 500,000 suppliers. IndiaMart is India's largest B2B marketplace, and it has over 3.5 million buyers and a selling model which is very similar to Alibaba. IndiaMart, for those of you who are thinking of selling via B2B into India, is one absolutely worth looking at if you are wanting to test the market rather than go in through those traditional export channels into India. eWorldTrade is the fastest growing B2B portal in the world. It services 220 countries, so it's very wide. It's based in the US, but it sells everywhere. Trade India is India's second largest marketplace, and they have over 3 million registered users. Then there's the Korean brand EC21. It operates 3 different marketplaces for China, Korea, and globally, lots of different buyers, lots of different suppliers. DH Gate is for wholesale consumer products. and it has around about 10 million buyers internationally. Now, we all know Amazon as a B2C marketplace, but there's also Amazon Business, which is the specific B2B portal for professional sellers to reach business customers on Amazon. So if you're already selling B2C on Amazon, it's probably a really easy transition for you to switch and to also sell via Amazon Business to your business customers. FGM Vendors is a wholesale marketplace that operates very much like an online trade show. Wholesale Central is the largest wholesale directory of active wholesalers and wholesale products, and they've been operating since 1996, which is a really long time for a marketplace. Jure is the largest wholesale marketplace for fashion with 155,000 retailers and 1,500 brands. Field Engineer, B2B marketplace that focuses solely on businesses finding and hiring telecom engineers. So if you have need of such a person, or if you are a business that supplies such people, you want to be looking at Field Engineer. And I include that one simply by virtue of giving you a sense of how very niche some of these marketplaces can be. Global Sources is a media company that is a primary facilitator of trade with Greater China. It uses English language media and around 1.5 million international buyers. And then finally, I'd just like to mention Globatus, growing marketplace focused specifically on the European market. It's very different from Alibaba because here businesses don't trade single items, but they are very much into building relationships and long-term partnerships. So if that's a business model that is of interest to you, you're thinking of Europe, then you might want to be looking at Globatus. So I'm going to look now in a little bit more detail at some of those niche marketplaces across just 3 different sectors. So again, you get a sense of what is available out there, and it also gives you an idea of how specific you can start getting with some of these marketplaces. So in the case of fashion marketplaces, if you look at a marketplace as opposed to selling through your own eShop, they can not only help you move much larger volumes of inventory, but of course they can also give you brand exposure. The best fashion marketplaces do invest a lot of money in getting traffic to their websites, and they're always looking for products that can expand their ranges, because the wider the range they have, the more customers they can attract. If you have products that they really want, they will help you by featuring you on their homepage, for example. So many people, when they think of fashion, they think of eBay and Amazon, which of course are perfectly valid choices, but there are a lot of others, and we're just going to focus on 3 of those today. So one of the marketplaces that is available to you if you are in fashion is Farfetch. Farfetch is a B2C marketplace, and it features luxury fashion brands. So you have to be high end here. It's a global retail marketplace for luxury fashion. It connects brands with retailers and customers around the world. There are about 3,000 different businesses featured, and Farfetch is where you will find designers like Gucci, Burberry, Jimmy Choo, etc. They do also feature high-end brands that are not necessarily the ones that we think of immediately, like the ones you've just been listed. They also will look at brands. So if there's an Australian brand that is a high-end Australian brand and that has international appeal, they will certainly look at featuring that brand as well. Farfetch is far more than just a listing of products, though. They have some really high-end content on the site as well. And part of that is helping to inform their customers of what is available, market trends, etc. ASOS, also B2B site, which is aimed at high-end, but also high street and growing brands, which makes it a lot more accessible than Farfetch. It is the granddaddy of all fashion marketplaces. Thousands of brands millions of people in the customer base, and a really good way for you to get exposure to your brand. All the success of ASOS is down to their customer experience. It's not just what they sell, it's how they sell it. They also offer free delivery returns, pay later checkout options, intelligent fit assistance using VR type experiences or AR. They strive to absolutely give people the same shopping experience that they would in store. So if you are selling through ASOS, everyone assumes that you get their tick of approval and that you are trusted, and you are then also being sold alongside some really big names. So if you're being sold alongside Calvin Klein, there's a good chance that people take your brand seriously. The final one I'm going to look at is a B2B site for fashion. And so it's a B2B wholesale fashion site covering fashion brands of any size, any niche. It's really fairly agnostic. It works to streamline the wholesale buying process by providing brands and retailers a central hub to browse products, access real-time inventory, etc. And again, lots and lots of different brands, lots of customers. And by listing there, you are in front of some of the biggest brands and retailers in history. Now, the next niche area, and also the niche marketplaces we're going to look at, is those for digital products. Now, of course, digital products can't be held, they can't be touched, but consumers really are taking to this. So everything from ebooks to music to downloadable software. If you sell digital products, there are, of course, lots of advantages, including the fact that you don't have to hold stock. You don't have to keep products on shelves anywhere with all the insurance that goes with that, etc., etc. And generally, customers get the product as soon as they buy it because they just get a download code. So even though we're looking at niche marketplaces over the course of this section of the presentation, I have included Amazon in this one because Amazon is still the most popular solution for people selling digital goods online. There were, if you look at those Amazon sales, a good chunk of those were devoted to digital downloads. So it's a really good way to reach an international customer base for anything from ebooks to games and apps and all climes in between. They also offer Amazon exclusive deals to sellers like the Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing Program, which helps to drive commissions to authors and writers, provided they only sell on the Amazon Kindle store for a period of time. The product costs here depend on the type of products that you sell. The next one I'd like to touch on is Sellfy. So Sellfy is a popular and affordable solution for selling products online, and it also has the option to sell physical products. So if you are doing both, this is a good offering for you. Lots of great features. It simplifies e-commerce, and it supports over 60,000 creators across the globe. So if you're selling pure digital products, you can do that through Sellfy. If you're selling things like customized shirts and fashion, music, etc., Sellfy can also help you to do that. And it will help you with drop shipping if you need it. It comes with a visual builder that's embedded that helps you to get your store up and running, and you really don't need to know how to code to do this. And their print-on-demand service means you can print merchandise very quickly and you can get it to your customers without holding stock. Gumroad lets you sell audio clips, ebooks, and videos, and it all happens at the click of a button. There are unlimited bandwidths and payments, just 3.5% plus 30 cents per transaction. Clean interface, very easy to use, and they also have advanced analytics, which really helps you with your planning and your strategizing. So Gumroad, built primarily for authors, filmmakers, and musicians, and a lot of big name artists sell through Gumroad because of the easy interface with which to use. The final one I'm going to touch on today is Udemy. It's a hub for selling video courses. So if you are a creator of online education content and you want to sell that content through a marketplace, this is one to think about. It's a really great way to create passive income. If you create courses online, you already know that. So if someone buys directly from you as a result of a lead that came directly from you, you receive 97% of the revenue. If they have arrived at Udemy and they find you by organic search through Udemy, then Udemy keeps 50% of the revenue. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you want to sell video courses, then this is definitely one that you want to be thinking about. And the final area that I'm going to concentrate on today is electronics. Electronics, of course, have very specific requirements, but also huge volumes being traded around the world. So by 2023, it's estimated that in the US alone, around $2.06 trillion of electronic consumer goods will be traded. If you simply look at an electronics business, you will figure out the right way to sell. Depends on the product that you want to sell, whether you're selling B2C or B2B, the target market into which you're selling, and of course, and very importantly, any applicable regulations, because these goods are heavily regulated, because these goods can cause a great deal of harm if the regulation is not met. So you do need to be very careful about how you sell, where you sell, and what the conditions under which you sell are, because you need to comply. If you don't comply, you will be in a great deal of trouble. So some marketplaces to be aware of if you are a specific electronics retailer, there's Newegg. Newegg is an online marketplace that specializes in electronics and hardware. It has over 40 million customers in 20 countries. And really interesting is that it gives a seller rating in the form of eggs. And you use these ratings then to figure out which sellers are the most trustworthy to buy from. And that's how customers make their purchasing decisions on Newegg. Rakuten, not a specialist electronics marketplace by any means, but it does move huge volumes of electronic goods. It is the marketplace often called the Amazon of Japan. It's the largest B2B2C e-commerce site in Japan. So sold business to consumer. It's an end-to-end supply chain site, and that makes it quite rare as well. The Rakuten marketplace, once only available in Japan, has now expanded globally. So that certainly is one for you to think about and one for you to consider if you are wanting to sell electronic goods. The other one that I'm going to mention today is one that is aimed specifically at people who sell software and online games, and that's G2A. G2A is a specialist gaming and software marketplace. They, again, have millions of customers, hundreds of thousands of products, and they aim to be the first destination for gamers and geeks. They regularly run promotions, and those include store-wide discounts, and those promotions do attract large customer bases. So if you have developed an online game and you want to get an outlet for it, and you don't think you'll get enough traction through your own website or through a games store, an online phone store, for example, like the Apple Store, then you certainly want to consider getting into G2A. And as I say, that also applies to software. Now, in the time that's left today, I've alluded at several points over the course of today that you need to take into account location when you are choosing your marketplace, because not all marketplaces are in all locations, and some marketplaces are just far better received in some locations than others. So we're just going to have a quick look at some of those marketplaces that are in places of the world other than Australia. We obviously all know what we use here as consumers. But if we look at Asia, China, of course, is the largest e-commerce market in the world, and India is the fastest growing one. In China, the top marketplaces are Alibaba, AliExpress, Jingdong, Taobao, Tmall Global, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce Shai Hongshu because I'm sure I've got it wrong. So any Chinese people online, please don't correct me or do correct me when we next speak. Other top marketplaces across Asia, Amazon Japan. Yes, there is an Amazon in Japan in addition to Rakuten. There's also Amazon India, eBay India, Flipkart, and Snapdeal. Those are the top ones in those markets. Latin America, so according to WorldPay's annual global payments report, the e-commerce market in Latin America is expected to grow at a compound rate of 19%. And that was over the last 5 years, and it is looking to be that way into the future as well. It's growing, and it's growing really fast. Top e-marketplaces in LATAM, Avenida, Americanas, Amazon, but specifically Amazon Brazil and Mexico, Casas Bahia, Extra, Liverpool, Submarino, Walmart de Mexico, Mercado Libre, particularly in Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, and Lineo. So you can see there that when we're starting to think around those big three, there is Amazon, but it's Amazon specific. We don't see eBay on this list, and we don't see Alibaba on this list. North America, of course, huge e-commerce market, and bear in mind that North America has 2 countries in it. So in the USA, Amazon by far the biggest marketplace. Best Buy, eBay, Etsy, Jet, and Newegg are the top ones. And in Canada, it's Amazon Canada, Best Buy Canada, eBay Canada, Etsy Canada, and Newegg Canada. So mirroring the United States to some extent, with the exception of Jet. In UK and Europe, and until fairly recently, we could put them in one basket, but of course now they're not the same thing anymore. Again, e-commerce, very large, and it's expected to be growing at an annual rate of around 7.3%. The top e-commerce marketplaces in the UK, Amazon UK, eBay UK, Etsy UK, not on the high street, and Zalando. So 2 that we haven't seen before that you need to note. And in Europe, it's Amazon, eBay, Otto, Chibo, Yatego, and Zalando. And of course, these are not exhaustive lists. There are any number of others. These are just some of the top ones. The Middle East is a growing e-commerce market. It's already pretty substantial, and it looks to be growing exponentially as time goes by. There, the top marketplaces are Let's Tango, Mum's World, Souk UAE, which is Amazon, and Souk KSA, which is also Amazon, and Wadi. And in Africa, the 2 largest e-commerce markets are South Africa and Nigeria. And Nigeria runs a fairly slow second to South Africa, around 70% of the South African market. The top e-commerce marketplaces in Africa, Biddelbuy, Takealot, Zando, Konga, and Jumia. Now, the reason this is, and why Amazon, for example, and eBay is not particularly popular in Africa, is that taxes and fees are levied on purchases made on those platforms and in those marketplaces. So people prefer to buy from the local organizations because that way they don't pay taxes. And that brings us to the end of today's session. And I know we've covered a great deal of ground today. We've only got a few minutes left, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box, and I will take them as they come through. And in the meanwhile, that is my email address. So if you have any specific questions about today's presentation, or if you want a copy of the deck, if you have any questions about your specific product, if it's a particularly niche one and where you might look at selling it, again, fling me an email and I'll dig up some information for you. And of course, have a look at the remainder of the export skills program activities, because there's a lot of good stuff still to come in a lot of different modules. To give you a sense of where we're going with the advanced e-commerce module, today obviously we did marketplaces. The next one on the 19th of May is a face-to-face workshop, and we're going to be looking at omni-channel retail in that face-to-face workshop. So please do bear in mind that the next one is a face-to-face one. There are limited places. If you are going to book for it, please book for it and come to it, because if you hold a place and you don't arrive, somebody else wasn't able to take that place, which is really unfair. And it's so if you can't make it, don't book for it. And if you have booked and you can't make it, please let us know so we can let that space go to someone else. And then we're also in the remainder of the session going to be looking at building a website in 2022, which is wider than just your eShop. Advanced digital marketing, automation and AI for efficiency, AI and the future, and we're also going to be talking data. So lots of great stuff still to come in the e-commerce module. Thank you, Herbert, for the kind words. Yes, the notes will be available. I will be circulating the slide deck. If you drop me an email, then I'll send that through to you. And again, Annabelle, thank you for your kind words as well. Well, I think all that remains then, everyone, if there is one more hour. No, we only have 1 hour. Sorry, Herbert, these ones are limited to an hour. Your webinar timing might show 2, but we found over time that if we run over an hour, it's very difficult to hold attention online for more than an hour these days. I think we all agree that we can be a little bit zoomed out. So no, it doesn't run for 2 hours, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. So thank you very much, everyone, for being part of today's session. It's always great to have an engaged audience like yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next one. And of course, to seeing you face to face on the 19th, when we will be looking in more detail at some of that fun stuff around omni-channel retail. All that remains is to say have a great afternoon, and I look forward to the pleasure of your company next time. Go off and sell, do some good business. Goodbye.